Namaste. So we continue with this series of Sri Aurobindo's life through his poems. And as we have often said, human life, we have a tendency to cut everything into bits and parts. So you'll see standard biographies, this period, Baroda, this period, Kolkata. While all that is okay, but life moves organically. Already life is hidden inside the stone, that's how it comes out. So we see in Sri Aurobindo's life right from the beginning, the seeds, as we have seen in his poem as a 10-year-old, the seed of the avatar, actually not even a spiritual being but an avatar. Then we see in just his adolescence, we already see like in mother's writing in adolescence, path of later on, 15-year-old, we already see that the revolutionary and the spiritual revolutionary, both the freedom, the one who would initiate in a way, actually initiate the freedom movement, and the spiritual revolutionary, the visionary, all that is already there. This is the beauty of, the organic growth. So, we see in Sri Aurobindo's life also, and it's according to Sri Aurobindo's own letter, which he writes, or rather he corrects portions of his biography, where people speak about that, he came to Baroda, joined the state civil service. Subsequently, at some point, he went into the freedom struggle. Sri Aurobindo has corrected it. And he said, no, even while in Cambridge, he knew that he had to play a great role in the country's freedom struggle, and he knew that this is what he wants to do when he comes. And actually we see that even before coming, he has written a couple of articles, and as soon as he comes, he starts the Hindu Prakash, or rather he starts writing for it, but they are too fiery, so he is to drop out. Then what happens? During 1894 to roughly 6-7 year period, Sri Aurobindo concentrates on understanding the field, because he has plunged into a field. He has come with a tremendous revolutionary impulsion within him. If you look at his own life, past life, Danton, then we see Trojan War. There is a poem I was just discussing, Three Cries of Deiphobus. So Deiphobus is the character when all the Odysseus and all of them enter in the Trojan horse. So Deiphobus is one of the brother of Hector and Paris. In fact, after Hector, he is considered to be the noble and warrior. So he is the only person who cautions them that, look here, you people are asleep, you think you have won the victory, you are enjoying wine, you are enjoying all this, but actually you should be awake, otherwise Troy can be seized. So he had sensed that this horse contains probably the warriors, and he had a plan to kill them. So there is a poem called Three Cries of Deiphobus. We also see that he was inspired by the Irish Revolution. So we see lines on, Irish Revolution, which we have the Island Grave, Charles Stuart Parnell. So all these are poems related to the Irish Revolution. We also see To the Boers. There is a poem like that. So the Boers were basically, there was a uprising against England, or that time the empire, in South Africa and neighboring colonies. So this uprising was the Boer War. This again at the end of the century, which ultimately they lost. Though initially they won, but ultimately they were setbacks. So we see all these things crowding together in Sri Aurobindo to awaken. And he was himself Danton, who had sacrificed so much for the countries, for the great struggle, for the great ideals for which they lived. So we see these poems reflecting that mood of the revolutionary which is taking place. But was India ready? No, it was not ready, because he had come with such a fire that people were not ready for that. They wanted supplication, they wanted prayer and petition. This is the word Sri Aurobindo has used. That the then Congress wanted to adopt the policy of prayer and petition. And he very beautifully in his articles reminds us that it is not possible that the British will ever concede, because they have so much stakes involved. They have so much to loot. They have so much, their economy is running on this. Why would they actually give you independence just because you are praying and you are, petitioning? So that part we have already spoken about in Sri Aurobindo's writings, the Bande Mataram. So here we see that he was able to foresee that there were great revolutions which were coming, and India needed to be shaken up because it had to play a central role. So there is a very interesting poem of Sri Aurobindo written in the Baroda period, I'll just read a little bit of that. In the moonlight. So this is a poem where Sri Aurobindo foresees the end of the age, and the poem is okay. Till we find the poem in the moonlight and get the page, let me read another one. That was a time when life and death were playing around. We see Sri Aurobindo invoking Kali. In fact, last week we read about one of the Bengali poems where he invokes Kali, or rather he is aware, the mother awakes, that she is woken up and she is awake, and what she wants the sacrifice of those who would die for her, who are living for her and die for her. So when you are going to participate in a movement where your life and death are at stake, so the first thing important is to get rid of the fear of death completely. So that's what we see in the Gita, because Arjuna is going to fight a great battle, not only against his own people, but it's one thing that you fight a battle which is a friendly battle, but quite another where all the deadliest combination of people are against you, where death can stalk you at any point of time. So we see some of the poems during this period are centered around death. And what was Sri Aurobindo's thought about death? And he was reminding the people that don't be afraid of death. If you want to participate in the freedom struggle, be ready to die if that be the need of the Great Mother. So this is a poem, to weep because a glorious sun. To weep because a glorious sun has set, which the next morn shall gild the east again. To mourn that mighty strengths must yield to fate. That, he was a great man, see what happened, he's lying on the road into dust. He died such an ignominious death, which by that fall a double force attained. So he's reminding us that those who live for a greater ideal, even if they die, it is not a loss, because they return back with greater force. In Savitri, this is what he reveals to us, that the spirit rises mightier with each defeat. Its godlike wings grow wide with every fall. So, greater force attain. To shrink from pain without whose friendly strife joy could not be. To make a terror of death. What is the hullabaloo about death? The punchline will come in the end. So, right now he's just stating the clauses. Who smiling beckons us to further life? Why we are afraid of death? It is smiling us to further life. And is a bridge for the persistent breath. The breath that persists from one life to another. It's just a bridge taking us through that. Despair and anguish and the tragic grief of dry set eyes, or such disastrous tears as rend the heart, though meant for its relief. And all man's ghastly company of fears are born of folly. What is that folly? That ignorance. Are born of folly that believes this span of brittle life can limit immortal man. The second chapter of the Gita summarized so beautifully. That why are you afraid? You think they will die or you will die? Nothing. Who dies? So that aspect of Shri Krishna, we often suddenly, make such transitions that, Shri Krishna suddenly came into Sri Aurobindo. It's not that suddenly on 24th November 1926, suddenly Shri Krishna came from the blues. We see Sri Aurobindo's life right from beginning. And that's what he tells Nirodha, that, when he says, at one place he casually, passingly mentions, I have lived a dangerous life, much more dangerous than you people can imagine. So he asked Sri Aurobindo, sir, what did you mean by dangerous life? He says, you don't understand what is a dangerous life? For years, actually, by the time he started writing Bande Mataram, he was already getting onto the hit list of the British government. And even before that, organizing a revolutionary movement. Any time you could be just picked up, sent to gallows, or forced imprisonment. Then, of course, the Alipur bomb trial. So he says, you don't think it is a dangerous life? So what is dangerous life really? So we see here he had got over all these things. The next poem, which we will not read, but worth reading, later on, those who are interested, what is this talk of slayer and the slain? So if you read these two poems, we see actually he is preparing himself for the war that is to come, and the two poems very beautifully summarize Sri Krishna's own revelations on death. What is this talk of slayer and of slain? Swords are not sharp to slay, nor floods assuage the flaming soul. I find these lines so much more remarkable than, nanam chiddanti shastrani, nanam dahati pavaka. So, the flaming soul, mortality and pain are mere conventions of a mightier stage. As when a hero by his doom pursued falls like a pillar of the huge world uptorn, shaking the hearts of men and awe imbued, silent the audience sits or weeps forlorn. Hero has fallen, the whole audience is watching, Meanwhile, behind the stage, the actor sighs, deep lunged relief, puts off what he has been, and talks with friends that waited, or from the flies, watches the quiet of the closing scene. Even so, the unwounded spirits of the slain, beyond our vision, passing live again. So many of these poems we see, he is shaking off this fear, this comfort zones in his writing Burjo and the Samurai. So the samurai ideal, Sri Aurobindo put across before mankind, especially India, because he knew that people are so happy with their comfort zone, they don't want to leave it. And that again comes in one of his very beautiful poems. Of course, one of our favorites is Baji Prabhou. So Baji Prabhou is based on a real incidence. Now, only that part is taken up. Rest all is Sri Aurobindo says that is his own rendering of the incident. So the incident was that Rangana fort, where about 12,000 men, mainly Mughals, but also Afghans, Pathans, Rajputs, were pitted against just a few Marathas, probably handful, maybe 50, through a very dangerous pass, and they had to hold. And who will hold them? So Baji Prabhu is the leader. He says, I will hold it. And one by one, the description is how he faces them, literally pushes them back. He has to wait till evening. From morning till evening, the fight will go on, because somebody has gone to fetch Shivaji with guns and arms and ammunition. So for at least, good number of hours, he has to hold against the assault of 12,000 huge army, just about, men in tens, not even hundreds. And of course, it's an climb for the enemies, but still 12,000 is a huge number. And Baji Prabhu holds the fort. There again we see this, that how fear of death can pass away in such moments. And I'll just read a few lines, since it is especially Dashera week. So these lines are literally an invocation of Durga and how Durga works. So sometimes I feel, let me just not ventilate, but people celebrating Durga Puja. I see also one today, some message, Dashera festivities are there, have festivities, enjoy, have fun. My God, I mean, Durga demands blood of the heart, not fun. I mean, happy Dashera, let me be Mahisasur. Literally it means that. Durga is not moved by this kind of worship. You may bring and install the idol, but she wants to be installed in the heart. And Sri Aurobindo knew right then that it is Durga who guards the fate of India. So we see here in Durga's throat he's already done that. But that's at the end. Durga's throat is the last composition. But here we see that through Baji Prabhu, this is also 1909, around that period. But he actually reminds us that, we must become instruments of Durga if we really want the freedom struggle. And here we see when there is a very nice little exchange between him and Tanaji Malsure, who is going to fetch Shivaji. And he says that he tells him that, I am going to come and I hope I will see you. And Baji answered him, Tanaji Malsure, not in this living net of flesh and nerve, nor in the flickering mind is a man's manhood seated. Flickering mind. Should I not? Hesitation. Courage and love, Sri Aurobindo regarded as the indispensable virtues. He says all the rest can be eclipsed, but courage and love can alone save the soul. And this what we find is so much, missing. Even when he speaks about the cause of India's decline, he says we have a lot of knowledge. We have so many philosophies, paths. We have bhakti. We don't lack in bhakti, but we lack in strength. So he says that what is needed is strength. And we see him invoking strength. God within rules us, who in the Brahmin and the dog. See the Gita again and again. Samalosht Kanchana, the Brahman, the Swana, the Pandit, all these, Hastini, Gai, Claude, all these are manifestations of the divine. So he says, who in the Brahmin and the dog can, if he will, show equal Godhead. Not by men is righteousness achieved. Baji or Malsure is but a name, a robe, and covers one alone. We but employ Bhavani's strength, who in an arm of flesh is mighty as in the thunder and the storm. So the same might which we see in the thunder and the storm can enter an arm. And of course, this is an experience of the past life where he said in Napoleon he saw the arm of God striding through Europe. The same strength can inform the body and the arm of a person. I asked for 50 swords. He says, I just want 50 swords to come, nothing else. And Malsure, well, Baji, I'll build thee such a pyre as man had never yet. When we return, for all the Deccan brightening shall cry out, Baji, the Prabhu burns. So he said, I know you are on a suicidal mission. This is Yagya, this is Ahuti. He was inviting all the Indians to come and be ready for the Ahuti because a Yagya is going to start. So if we look at really the freedom movement, people often say it restarted with, Mangal Pandey, but actually speaking, the reasons why he started were very different and it died down very soon. Of course, there was a resistance and all that. After that, almost from 1857 to 1900, almost 40 years, we see everything is quiet. And Sri Aurobindo really rekindled that fire. From these smoldering ashes, he rekindles the fire. The same ashes on which the pyre of Rani Lakshmi Bai and their pyre was lit, he rekindles it and brings out the strength of Bhavani. And with a smile, the Prabhu answered, Me thou shalt not burn, for this 5 feet or more of bone and flesh, whether pure flame or jackals of the hills, be fattened with its rags, may well concern others, not Baji Prabhu. And the chief, with a high calmness, in a shining look, we part. O friend, but meet again we must. When from our tasks released, we both shall run like children to a mother's clasp. So, this idea that death of the body is nothing. What is important is the immortal soul. All through we see. And then there is a beautiful passage, Bhavani is, okay, Mother Bhavani is the goddess of India, making an idol, calling her, installing her in a pandal, and people go to ridiculous extent, chocolate made Mother Durga and God knows. All that is okay, it's fine, maybe some memory has to be preserved. But actually the time has come when Durga has to be installed in our hearts. The thing is, are we pure enough? In 1910, Sri Aurobindo invited us to that journey. Are we still ready? I was sharing this with someone that, still, even those who have read Sri Aurobindo's Durga's Throat, still we will hear that morning Mahalya, I am going to wake up and, listen. Whereas Sri Aurobindo's Durga's Throat is lifting it to what levels? So here he describes, so now we see Baji Prabhu is fighting and slowly everyone is dying. There are just about handful, 3 or 4 or 5 left. And there is no sign of Shivaji. What does he do at that point of time? Does he save his life? Not to a Kshatriya of that time, the samurai. To run away and save your life is death. Death is not falling on the battlefield. Death is to run away and save your life. So that is death. We read that in, Vidula, where Vidula tells her son that you want to live, that is worse than death. Better you die. So here the description of the goddess entering into Baji Prabhu and he is transformed in a moment of apocalypse. Page 305. So fought they for a while, then suddenly upon the Prabhu all the goddess came. Loud like a lion hungry on the hills, he shouted, and his stature seemed to increase, striding upon the foe. You see, the description is so graphic. I mean, Sri Aurobindo has definitely experienced all these things. Rapid his sword, like lightning playing with a cloud made void, the crest before him on his either side, the swordsman of the south with swift assault, preventing the reply. Till like a bank, the swordsman of the south is describing the Deccan, the Marathas. So from the side south are preventing all these swordsmen. Till like a bank of some wild river, the assault collapsed over the stumbling edge and down the rise, and once again the desperate moment passed. What they did was just few of them standing, and as they are trying to climb, they are constantly reversing till the entire thing collapses because they are trying to climb. So hundreds of them just collapse while trying to climb. So there is a moment of respite. The relics of the murderers' strife remain, but it's not like the war is over. Corpses and jewels, broidery and gold, but not for this would they accept defeat. So they are also going to, once more they came and almost held. Then wrath rose in the Prabhu, and he raised himself in soul to make an end. But even then, so now he has come to make the complete sacrifice. That if that's what Bhavani wants, I am prepared for that. These were the kind of men who one really, who run in the veins of Indian nation. And it's so sad when we, like Sri Aurobindo says that, India lies low in selfishness. When we are talking about petty things and small things and, confined to these small little personal joys, personal pleasures. So he says, a stillness fell upon his mood, and all that godlike impulse faded from his heart, and passing out of him a mighty form stood visible, titanic, scarlet clad. Nowhere we'll read such descriptions of Mother Kali. Sri Aurobindo is a Shakt. We see that a worshipper of Shakti. And people who paint him like a philosopher, 1914, there is the life divine, nobody denies it. But look at the bhakta, he starts with bhakti. And when we read through his writings, they are fire. They are not writings which are like, wideness and that kind. They are fire, literally breathing fire. So here we have, and passing out of him a mighty form stood visible, titanic, scarlet clad, dark as a thunder cloud, with streaming hair, obscuring heaven, and in her sovereign grasp, the sword, the flower, the boon, the bleeding head, Bhavani. Then she vanished. The daylight was ordinary in a common world. And Baji knew the goddess formidable who watches over India till the end. So this is what he has seen. And because she gave him the vision, he is the instrument to save that time. And he knows that now she is here, she is watching over, and no harm can eventually come. And this is a story where Baji dies eventually. He dies, lays down his life, but by then Shivaji comes and he holds the fort till Shivaji's return. And at the end he is very touching. Shivaji, when he looks at him, he takes off his own crown, diadem, and gives it to Baji that you deserve it. But Shivaji sees that on his brow there is a much greater crown already, which has been crowned to him by none else but the Mother Goddess. So this is what we see Sri Aurobindo's way. He awakens the soul, inspires, not instructs like do this, do that. People who want to... Yoga is not done like that. That's why the first thing he speaks about is aspiration. What is aspiration? It's a fire. It's not like, okay, let me think about it, let me calculate which is better, let me weigh the options, this yoga versus that yoga. Okay, what am I going to get in this yoga? Wait for a life, if that's what we are looking for. What can I give? At one point the mother says that what is ultimate bhakti? When you give to the divine without expecting anything even from him in return. The joy of giving, what she is pointing out is the joy of giving. That's what we see in Sri Aurobindo during that freedom struggle. It's a spiritual nationalism, a spiritual freedom movement, if we want to put it. We have unfortunately painted Gandhi as a, spiritual freedom movement with all his, lathi khayenge, lathi leke chalenge. This is not spiritual. Sri Aurobindo says Gandhi is the European in an Indian body. And the reason why Gandhi was so much publicized, because it suited the British. Actually, had Gandhi continued, India would have not got freedom. It got freedom because the conditions of the world changed in such a way, the Second World War, that there was no way but to leave. They couldn't handle the colonies after that. But it didn't come because of Gandhi. In fact, perhaps it got postponed because of him. Though he used paradoxically the methods which Sri Aurobindo himself had spoken about, passive resistance and boycott and all the methods that he has stated in Bande Matram. So, here we have Sri Aurobindo, when Divine Mother, last time we read that she has given a call, the mother awakes. And Sri Aurobindo is awakened at night and hears the call. Now, he has become the messenger in that way, if you want to put it. He is now calling. Who will come? Who will come? Who will come? In 1902, we see one of the first men whom Sri Aurobindo, in a way, initiated into the revolt, the method of revolt, which put a lot of pressure on the British government, is Bhagajatin. And Bhagajatin, we know why his name was Bhagajatin, because he could kill a tiger barehanded. And this is the man, his grandchildren were here. We know Togada passed away, he was in the ashram. Prithvind Mukherjee, who is still, by the mother's grace, alive, he's in France. And Bhagajatin's grandson, Togada, was the man who stood single-handedly when ashram was attacked. So something of his grandfather's blood, and the mother says Durga had come over him. This was her words. So he fought like that, as if Durga is over him. In fact, she said Durga had come over him. And eventually he was struck in the head and he fell on one of the nallas, but survived because it was Bhavani taking care of him. So mother speaks of all that. So Bhagajatin was initiated to form groups in Bengal who could become hubs of revolutionary activity. So if we trace the movement, we'll see around 1902, Anushilan Samiti, that was one of the first group which was formed. And these groups now we hear about akhadas and Nirmohi Akhada and all these akhadas. So akhada culture started that way. Earlier to defend against the Islamic onslaught, and then the British. So akhada came in a big way, because if you say that we are practicing armed revolt, then nobody will allow you. So akhada was a very good way to train the young people to fight out when there is an assault. So with the lathis they learned, yesterday we read, I think, that with the lathis they fought a whole empire. Not taking a lathi in the hand and limping through it, but holding the lathi as a challenge against the British Empire, against cannonballs. That's how, that was the sacrifice needed. Eventually, of course, world conditions changed and the freedom came. So we read today this poem, very interesting. It's now Sri Aurobindo in turn is inviting. Who will come? Come with me. Now there is a whole war, but he never did it outwardly. Outwardly, he was doing it without the knowledge of he was in Baroda service, but he had to leave the Baroda service at some point because he was needed in Bengal. In Bengal, he left the National College. This is a remarkable, I would say, inspiration for all of us. Very few people would know that why he left the National College in Calcutta, where he was invited as to be the principal, and he was earning there, because he was implicated in the cases by the British government. And he knew that if he continues, the college itself may come under a scanner. So he resigned so that the college is safe and he will face it alone. And all the students that time, they come, they pray for him and all this. And he tells them that don't pray for me. If you are really praying for me, become instruments of this country. Live for her. If you go out, gain new knowledge and come back, serve her. That is a remarkable speech where he sets the gold standards that if by my fall, if by my resignation, the institution is saved, save the institutions, not me. What an ideal which, today hardly, you hardly find anybody. I don't know of any name where a person to save the institutions is ready and willing to sacrifice himself. And Sri Aurobindo was not guilty, mind you. It's not that he was saying, no, I am not guilty, why should I resign? All that he did was to save the institution. That no, because they will eventually shoot at the institution. So that's Sri Aurobindo, and that's why he is calling. Who are the people who are calling? He's sending them an invitation letter. from the great revolutionary, Kali Bhakt, that come with me. I want men, not many, 100 men who are complete men. Ready? Who is a complete man who is willing to sacrifice all for the sake of the one? So, invitation with wind and the weather beating round me, up to the hill and the moorland I go. Who will come with me? Who will climb with me? Wade through the brook and tramp through the snow. Nor in the petty circle of cities. If you want comfortable life to live, I want nice, Mercedes and what is it called? Huge, many servants to take care, huge AC guided buildings, whatever. So then you stay there. The invitation is not for you. Select people who are willing to give completely. So people often say, call to the yoga. Who gets the call? And even to sustain it is difficult. If one is ready to lose everything, when a group of people came by train to the mother and said, the disciple asked, Mother, there are people who have come, they want to know are they going to benefit from the supramental? Mother says, benefit? Tell them nothing. And then she says they will get few punches on their noses. They want to benefit? Love, you don't want to give anything. You want God to just provide you. But unless we give, how will there be space to receive anything of Him? We want to carry the entire world as it is. And we also want God. Unfortunately, He is too vast. He tells us, empty the contents. Maybe a little bit of me can come into you. So, not in the petty circle of cities, crammed by your doors and your walls I dwell. O'er me, God is blue in the welkin. Against me, the wind and the storm rebel. It is both a story of the inner and the outer life. I sport with solitude here in my regions. See, we have popularized so much. Ekla chalo, je koi dak sune na, tumi ekla chalo. Now mark these lines. I sport with solitude here in my regions. Of misadventure have made me a friend. What will happen? Misadventure will come. Oh, I am quite comfortable with it. Who would live largely? Who would live freely? Here to the wind-swept uplands ascend. I am the Lord of tempest and mountain. See, who can describe Rudra and Shankara in one word, in one phrase? He is not using the word. So if we are looking for a word, we will be mistaken. There is another poem, Sri Aurobindo's Epiphany, where he describes the two moods of Shiva. That is also before going to Pondicherry, during the revolutionary movement. So he is describing Rudra. Or who is Rudra? Lord of the tempest. And who is Shiv Shambhu? Mountains. I am the Lord of tempest and mountain. I am the spirit of freedom and pride, moksha. And Shiva, the mighty one. Stark must he be and a kinsman to danger. So Shiva is calling for the sacrifice. Stark must he be. You can't go there saying, it's too cold in Mount Kailash, I want to wear 5 fur coat. Sir, please arrange all this. Stark must he be, and a kinsman to danger, who shares my kingdom and walks at my side. Have you ever seen in Kailash anybody wearing fur coats and all that? So, this is the beauty of Shiva. But thankfully, if Sri Aurobindo had to take us along, this is what he would have asked us. And he knew man is not ready. So he said, I could have helped myself, but not others. And that's why we have the mother. But before we come to mother, we see finally this poem of Sri Aurobindo, or even before that, what he had foreseen in the moonlight. Just quickly we'll read a few lines. There is a poem. Again, he has written all this before coming to Pondicherry. And here he had seen already that this age is ending. So, all that we talk about, Sri Aurobindo becoming a yogi and developing foresight and all, already it is there. And how beautifully he writes. He rises now. Who rises now? Lord Vishnu from his sleeping couch. He rises now, for God has taken birth. Suddenly his couch is empty. He has taken birth. In whom? Leave it to the Lord who is writing. He rises now, for God has taken birth. The revolutions that pervade the world. When God comes, first there is revolution. Every time Rama has come, Krishna has come, now Sri Aurobindo. Because the whole Prithvi and Devlok and all the worlds, they are, under his feet. Are faint beginnings, and the discus hurled of Vishnu speeds down to entering the earth. If we look at the previous century, from late 1800s to the first 20 years of the previous century, we see revolutions, almost till the middle. And one can see very clearly that there is the breath of God upon the waters of life. Then now what we call revolutions are, nothing really. Now we have dharnas over petty issues. Some accident takes place, people give dharna. It has come down to that. Somebody dies, people give dharna. And they do dharna for every kind of things. Other day there was a dharna once in Pondicherry. So I just comically I asked them, amused at the whole sight. I said, why you are doing dharna? Very clear, 1,000 rupees and a bottle of wine. Telling this is, but that revolution is very different. This can achieve nothing except maybe a spotlight in the newspaper, and people think that something can be done by that. Yes, something will be done. Your name is marked in the register of hell because you had not the courage, and you deceived and duped and showed publicly as if you are somebody and something, whereas deep inside there was nothing but hollow and selfishness in the breast. But here is the chakra of Vishnu, Sudarshan. The old shall perish. Daksha is gone, slain by Shiva. You want to revive him? At your risk. Headless Daksha, the old shall perish, it shall pass away. Expugned, annihilated, blotted out. And all the iron bands that ring about man's wide expansion shall at last give way. It's the age of wideness, vastness. Anything that is narrow, anything that is stifling, it cannot survive. He has broken these bands, and we see that in everywhere, in everything. Nowadays, in olden days, children obey their parents, children obey their teachers, wives obey their husbands. Now, parents obey their children, teachers obey their students. They can tell you, the other day somebody had hit a little student tap on the head, and 10-year-old, he said, if I go to the police, you can be taken to jail. To the old teacher who had lived here for God knows 50 years, he said, what are you talking? He said, yes, these are the children who bring revolutions. I saw the omnipotent flaming pioneers. And of course we know that husbands obey, because nowadays, if husband goes to court, he may fight and prove. But if a wife goes to court, you are in trouble. So, freedom, God, immortality. I'm not inciting anybody, okay? Please don't go. Court is the worst place to go. Police is the worst people to... you cannot sort out any problem this way. I was about to say, and doctors are the worst people to heal. The all-healing doctor is within us. Please forgive all my colleagues. Love, wisdom, justice, joy and utter strength gather into a pure felicity. It comes at last, the day foreseen of old. What John in Patmos saw, what Shelley dreamed, vision and vain imagination deemed, the city of delight, the age of gold. The Iron Age is ended. Only now, the last fierce spasm of the dying past, the two great wars, the freedom at midnight, leading to so much massacre, so much. So that was the last fierce spasm of a dying past, shall shake the nations, and when that has passed, earth vast of ills shall raise a fairer brow. Here is a message for us too, because we often despair. Oh my God, I am so full of defects, unfit for anything. What yoga can I do? Is there hope for me? I am a sinner. So Sri Aurobindo says, I am saying in general, okay? I am not talking about anything personal. In Christian yoga, there is a lot of talk about, I am a sinner. The more you say I am a sinner, the greater the yogi you are. So even that becomes an ego. I am useless, I am a sinner. It is tamasic ego basically. Sometimes it can be a bloated spiritual ego. See, I am so humble. So humility is before the divine. This is man's progress, for the iron age prepares the age of gold. What we call sin is but man's leavings, as from deep within. The pilot guides him in his pilgrimage. So this is the journey of man. He leaves behind the ill with strife and pain because it clings and constantly returns. And in the fire of suffering fiercely burns, more sweetness to deserve, more strength to gain. So we'll close with this wonderful. We see constantly, as I said, Sri Aurobindo for a long time even would sign his letters as Kali. So and there is that famous aphorism of Sri Aurobindo where he talks about all the gods, be wide in me, O Varuna, and it continues. And at the end he says, liberate me from all these gods, O Kali. Giving Kali the greatest teacher because she is the one who can free us from everything. So people know of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa as a Kali Bhakta, and no doubt he is, who saw in Kali the world mother. But I have at least not heard, and I would be very happy, Sri Aurobindo as the Kali Bhakta. And in the real sense, why? Because Kali changes time, and Sri Aurobindo changed with one stroke all future time. He changed the destiny of India, he changed the destiny of the world and of mankind. He changed the age from the Iron Age to the Golden Age. And therefore we see in him one who was invoking Kali. And surely those who are wanting to walk the path, it is not enough just to read, philosophize and have nice seminars and talks and discussion. All that is fine. But real yoga begins when Mother Kali comes and says, there is this copper, my little bowl, it is empty because whatever was in it I have taken. Are you ready to give? What do you want, Mother? I'll give some money. I don't want money. See, I am garlanded with skulls. What will I do? I don't even need a dress. Mother, what do you want? Shall I make a house for you, a temple? Temple? Houses? I don't stay in crammed up places. I live in the battlefield. I feed on the cries of the demons who are slain. Mother, what do you want? Your head and your blood. And if one is ready, then Kali slays the old head and transplants it with a new one. If we are not ready to die to the old consciousness, then see, this is what is the whole game. And so we have this wonderful poem of Sri Aurobindo. Last time we read the Bangla poem, The Mother Awakes. And this poem now, which we'll read, is Sanskrit poem. As far as I know, the only Sanskrit poem, not only Sanskrit Rachna, because Sri Aurobindo has written few lines which go under the name of Sri Aurobindo Upanishad. He has also written a Tantra Sutra, which is not poem. But here there is a poem, there is a meter, and it is 99 verses in Sanskrit. So it's not just a small little poem which Sri Aurobindo wrote. And the period is between 1904 to 1908. So constantly we see that Sri Aurobindo is invoking. And this is before he has gone to Lele Maharaj. And that's why when somebody asks Sri Aurobindo that, sir, you talk about grace, but you got it all by personal effort. He says, who told you that I got by personal effort? The nirvana. I got it by the grace of the Guru, or if you like, by the grace of Krishna and Kali. That's how he says. Because even before that, one can see him living the truth of the Gita during the revolution, and of course, Kali, with whom he is invoking. So along similar lines, but this is a completeness. So there we see the mother awakes, and she's asking everybody to awake. But this poem, Bhavani Bharati, has several movements. First is the mother comes. Today is the first day of Durga Puja. The mother comes. So we have the pandals. But she has come. When we go and do her darshan now, we should know what she is going to ask. As I lay sunk in the comfort of my couch, and my mind wandered on the roads of spring, I thought of my people, of poetry, of wife and enjoyments, pleasure and possessions. So the whole family goes to have darshan of Ma Durga. I shaped my delight into elegant verse and lyrical stanzas of sensuous passion. I'm reading the English translation. I sang of I think it's available as in a book from Bhavani Bharati, and for those who may not be aware, this translation was published in Mother India in 2008. It has been done by Sampadanand Mishra. So, I know some sites mentioned by Sri Aurobindo. But as far as I know, in Mother India 2008, it was published as translated by Sampadanand Mishra. So, anyways, the most important is the feel of it. I sang of the smile on my beloved's face and the revered and most sacred feet of the mother. So, there is also that worship. So, people go and revered feet of the mother. On the final Dashera day, you have the altar and all that. I pray to the feet, then come back my life unchanged. My country wept all around me, for a villainous titan oppressed her children. Led by self-interest, I paid homage to the feet of the evil one, stained with the blood of my brothers. What can I do? This life, one has to, be practical, under the name of practical. So I have to pay homage. Lying at ease on a soft couch and dreaming of pleasures, enjoyments and wealth. This is the Asuri Sampada. Oh, my shares are going to rise in the market because the Chinese market is going to crash. So maybe I'll become a billionaire. Oh, my son, he is just going to finish his studies in US. And I'll be a rich man. I'll go to US and settle down there. Now all this, couch with pleasure. The bourgeois ideal. Constantly we see this, bourgeois and the samurai. I felt on my chest the touch of a dreadful hand, and to my eyes grew visible the shape of Kali. She comes and wakes him up. How? Touching the heart. The heart awakens. Garlanded with the bones of men, and girdled with human skulls, with belly and eyes like a wolf's, hungry and poor, scarred on a back by the titan's lashes, roaring like a lioness who lusts for kill, with her fierce, hungry, blazing eyes, irradiating all the worlds, rending the hearts of the gods with the piercing ring of her war cry. So she comes and he sees the mother, and then what does she say? Mother comes and says something. So normally we see the divine comes and says, ask what you want. Mother does not. You see all the writings during the Bande Mataram period, he says, what does the mother want? He doesn't say what the mother will give. All through, whatever Sri Aurobindo has spoken of, self-giving, all of this they have practiced. And that's why there is such a power and conviction in it. So what does the mother say? As soon as she comes, arise, give. The mother's thirsting call resounded through the night in the starless city, thundering the noble goddess. Filled with her presence, the night's blackness and the hearts of men. How beautifully he's comparing. The night's blackness and the hearts of men. Alarmed and shaken in mind, I sprang from my couch and questioned that shape of darkness which compelled worship. Who art thou who appearest to my heart in the night in thy terrible splendor? What must I do? Speak salutations to thee, O beautiful goddess. Just compare it with chapter 11 of the Gita. If you read through, you will see the Vishwarup Darshan. There we have the Vishwarup Darshan of Krishna. But who was Krishna? In the Mahabharata, Kali, assuming the face of Shyam. Shyama had assumed. This is there in, Mahabhagavad Puran. So, maybe after the war is over, the two would have met and Mother Kali would have said, very nice, you could show your Vishwarup, but it was my strength which was informing you. What about mine? This is all my imagination or intuition, whatever. And the mother would have said, and Krishna would have said, wait, I'll come in the age of Kali. And when I come, then it will be your Vishwarup that I'll show to men. So you will see her Vishwarup, similar, but much more powerful and ending in a very beautiful way. Uttering a sound like a lion's roar. I am the mother, O child of the Bharata, the eternal people beloved of the gods, whom neither hostile fate nor time nor death has power to destroy. That's why this civilization can never be destroyed. This, because it's needed for the world. It's not out of any selfish interest. Their strength purified by their continence, rendered noble by self-knowledge and severe austerities, resplendent like 1,000 suns, they shone on a prosperous earth, heroic and bold, they would brook no hint of defiance from their foes, worshipping the mother with the sacrifice of her enemies. So there were enemies outside. Then in Durga's throat, Sri Aurobindo reminds, there are enemies inside. Who are the enemies? Lust and greed and hungry for power, ambition, fear. These are the enemies we must slay inside. At battle's end they stood radiant, their limbs anointed with blood. But who are these pitiful and indigent wretches who in their blindness embrace a degrading peace like a prostitute? Now this is now Mother Kali's Vishnu. It's not Krishna, who still has some alluring aspect. She says, who are these people? In Mahabharata, of course, everybody had come. Who are these people lying like this? Oh, you unmanly and weak-minded men, do you not know that it is death you clasp? She is not death, she is liberator. Whereas this is death, to lie like this when the world needs the fire of sacrifice. Summon forth to battle the ancient tribes of the Bharata. Where is the bow? Where the sword? Arise, arise, O sleeping lions. Hearing these words in the night and beholding in the darkness a dreadful splendor, my heart danced, and leaving my house, shaking off my pleasures, I quickly went forth. Remember, when Sri Krishna appearing on the battlefield, finally, he is still shaking. Should I not? Then he says, who are you? Exactly. No, here also he asks, who are you? Sri Krishna says, Kalosmi Bhava. I am time the destroyer. Why are you here? To destroy these people. So we see the same mood, not even similar. She says, hearing these words in the night, I saw then this land of India, the Aryan country, wrapped thickly in darkness, suffering, blinded, hidden in the night. And then he looks all around and he sees a titan, gigantic, crushing over India, Vindhyas and all other places. His foot is on India. And when he sees this, then what happens? He says something which we see again when Arjuna sees this form. There is a prayer and adoration that rises from his heart. It's there now in the Gita. And when he sees this, he says, who are you? Salutations to you. So here, he looks at the mighty goddess, terrible in radiant beauty. Salutations to thee, O goddess omnipotent. To thee I bow, who art terrible and mighty and compassionate. Thou alone preservest these peoples. Salutations to the forceful one, the primeval goddess. Who is there who can describe thy might? O goddess, impetuous in thy ways, with one delicate hand thou settest whirling or arrestest in its motion the universe with all its stars and suns. O infinite in energy. He says, this is the Vishwarup of the Divine Mother he has seen. And he's describing her both sides. So in Sri Krishna Vishwarup also you see, on one side there is the Divyamal, Gandh, compassion. On the other side we see the destruction aspect. Thou art the supreme power, awakening in millions of impassioned men. Incarnating thyself, thou preservest this noble people when it is fallen into distress. From age to age thou fightest, O mother of the Aryans. So we see Sri Aurobindo again, the stone goddess on Parvati hills, goddess Parvati, the Shakti, Durga in Bhavani. All over we see Sri Aurobindo, Durga and Kali. He doesn't, as if all other goddesses have to wait. First Durga and Kali. That period between 1901 to 1910, it's all about Durga and Kali. You see it through his poems and whatever he has himself written, and subsequently, as I said, such was the identification that he would sign as Kali. Today again I behold thy dazzling white form on the mountains of the north. What happened to Arjuna? When he saw Sri Krishna, he says, I cannot behold your form. Please show me a benevolent form of Chaturabhuj. But this is not Krishna, Arjuna. This is Sri Krishna himself standing before Kali. So he doesn't say, I cannot behold your form. This is the Leela of Ishvara and Ishwari. So he says, today again I behold thy dazzling white form on the mountains of the north. Effulgent thy light arises. O gracious one, gracious is thy noble form, white as snow, Uma Hemvati. This is one of the names of the Mother Goddess. The exalted countenance of Bhavani, I bow to the mighty one robed in white, radiant with the bright beauty of youth, her eyes moist with compassion. So he's seeing, both aspects of the Divine Mother. Where now is that terrible figure, garlanded with the bones of men and girdled with skulls, naked and fierce, dreadful with a gaping mouth, by whose cries I was suddenly aroused? So there we see, because Arjuna cannot see anymore. So he says, please reveal your gracious form. Here, he beholds and he knows what he has to do. And then the Divine Mother, having charged one life with the destiny of a race, she comes back that, look, this is the form I have assumed. I am none else but Gauri. I have assumed the form of Kali. I wear the mask of Kali when I kill. So this is how she manifests to Sri Aurobindo. If this is not spiritual experience, then I don't know what is spiritual experience. Standard textbooks, life of Sri Aurobindo, first experience, nirvana, and what is this? This is amazing. And then, too armed in thy gracious aspect, I bow to thee, and again with trident uplifted, bringing deliverance from fear, to thee I bow, O Mother, O radiant Savitri, O three-eyed one, thy white-limbed, white-robed loveliness mounted on a bull. So all the, bull is of course Parvati herself. So all this aspect he shows, and the change, because the Divine Mother has shown in one flash what she's going to do. I have read only excerpts, because 99 stanzas, so I've just picked up from here and there. So these are the three movements. First she comes, he awakens, and then she takes the terrible form, and he's awakened. His life is now charged with a mandate and a mission, that he has to become the instrument of Kali at that point of time for awakening the masses to the cry of the mother. So Bande Matram is born, another 2 years down the line. And after he does it, then the work of Krishna. First Kali comes, then Krishna comes. So this is how we see in Sri Aurobindo's life. And then when she sees that she has charged one life with all the force and he has received it all, then the Divine Mother changes into that gracious form, that this is what is the destiny, and I have come right now in this form, but this is the one which India shall be one day. 10-armed, thus Bhujadharini, 10-armed with all thy 10 weapons, thou protectest the Aryans, O Mother, unattainable in the 10 directions. So what is the symbol of these 10 arms? She is beyond the Dash Dishas. Whichever way you go, you will find one of her arm guarding the austere path to the alone. As the womb of the world, that primal energy out of whom the world comes into being, thou sittest with 1,000 arms embracing thy children. So that we know Bande Matram, Bankim Chand's 1,000 arms, million arms. Unthinkable in thy energy. Who can think of it? You. And then the last few lines, stanzas. The mighty mother of creatures has vanquished the age of strife. So now he sees that she has come and actually changed the world. All this in a flash, Sri Aurobindo has seen. So why this poem is taken? People may wonder 1904 to 1908. This poem was written over 4 years because that experience is developing to its fullness. That's how I understand it. There is nowhere Sri Aurobindo is not mentioned that because of that. But I look at it like that, that experience was developing in its fullness. So every time this came up, he was, writing these stanzas. Once again, so what happens toward the end? She has shown to Sri Aurobindo what she is going to bring to to this land? What is going to happen to India? What is India's destiny? People often ask, no? What is going to happen to India? As a weakling, if you ask, probably the mother will say, you are going to be slain. Don't be a bourgeois. But if you approach her as one who lays everything at her hands, what is she going to say? Because this is the revelation she has given to the one who is sacrificing everything for the sake of the mother. She says, once again I hear in the forest the chanting of the Veda, which is a fountain of immortalizing nectar to the heart. An overflowing river of humanity streams to the hermitages of the sages, perfected in self-knowledge. This is exactly what Sri Ramakrishna also said. That in the coming age, in the over another 200, 300 years, such men will be born in India who will pale the rishis of old. And Sri Aurobindo has made a similar prophecy. Mother has spoken about the same thing. But one has to go through this. So all these past rishis will pale into the background in front of this kind of humanity which is going to come. Once again, the eternal ways of the Dharma are guarded by one nobly born in the solar race. Who is this Suryavanshi? Solar rays, the supramental, very gently, subtly. The hints. One born in the solar race. Who is the solar race? We see the lineage of the great avatars. Who is the one who will be born to the solar race and carry on that task further? And once again, resplendent Lakshmi, a smile on her lips, reigns steadfast among the Bharatas. So, Lakshmi is going to come. But first, Mother Kali and the one born in the solar race. In east and west, I hear the cry and stir of the whole world, hastening with praise on its tongue to this country, the ancient mother of the Vedas. As those who dwell in Shiva's sacred city of Kashi are liberated by the auspicious touch of the Lord, so all this Aryan country where the goddess has set up purifying feet shall be the Kashi of the world. Want to hear a prophecy? All India is Kashi, not just one Kashi, whole of India, because the Divine Mother has set her foot upon earth in this land, Aryabhumi. O infinite in thy forms, thou art contentment, compassion, patience, and indomitable heroism. Wherever we find these qualities, there we should know that some touch of the Divine Mother is there. What are these qualities? Contentment, compassion, patience, and indomitable heroism, faith and endurance, and knowledge of every kind. Be gracious, noble goddess, dwell long in the hearts of the Indian people. He has seen all this with the Divine Mother's coming, illumining these rivers and snowy mountains with the most gentle luster. Be firmly established in the Aryan country. Abide forever gracious in this land, O Mighty One, for the good of the world. Namaste.